Ooh, yeah, welcome to the 7th episode of Shot of Nostalgia, where we're going to deep dive straight into Saturday night main event. Joining my partner in crime, my main man, the mega power himself.
Live from No Cell Studios at the Tavern, ACEFIELD Retro, and you said it so beautifully. We're here at the 7th episode out of 18 for this drive through Saturday night's main event, and we have some updates to the season, talking about some stuff coming up. Of course, we'll let you guys know, but we have some great stuff to go through, and we are hopping through, and this is one of the rare episodes. We're going to have our foot in one year and a foot in another year, 1987, 1988, so it's always a blast as we kind of ride through these years in a quick time warp, because Saturday night's main events are happening in piecemeal. They're happening, in different parts of the calendar. So we're not seeing the growth as intimately week after week, Belcaster, but we're seeing it happen in long stretches of time. So we're seeing guys turn face, then turn heel, and then face again. And then the stories are getting paid off at these events, but in a different way.
Yeah, no, I think the whole flow of it all is very refreshing. Actually, I'm enjoying coming into these episodes, kind of getting a fresh coat of paint every time we start a new, Saturday night's main event, and I'm absolutely loving it.
Yeah, and I think everyone enjoyed the week that we covered last week, and the events are definitely interesting as we build towards the bigger stories at these WrestleManias, and it seems like from WrestleMania to WrestleMania is how they're telling their stories, and now we are on the road to really WrestleMania 4, and there's a lot of important stuff that has to happen to eventually hold the title up, where eventually Macho Man will win the title in the one-night tournament over there at New Jersey, Atlantic City, where they hold WrestleMania at the Trump Plaza and all that stuff. But we have two Saturday night's main events to cover here. We're going to be covering 13 and 14. Let's start with 13, happening on November 28th, 1987, from the Seattle Center Coliseum in Seattle, Washington. Headlined by King Kong Bundy with Bobby Heenan versus WWF champion Hulk Hogan for the championship. And we also get Randy Savage versus Bret Hart.
Yeah.
So obviously this is almost a dream match. It's not the iteration. This isn't the fully realized version of Bret Hart that we knew that would be the main eventer, but it's still seeing two of the best of all time going at it in a primetime slot, which I'm very excited to cover.
Yeah, it's crazy to think how little their paths have crossed, and seeing this match was really awesome, man. Super, super cool. Me, I'm a big Macho Man guy, and I am a big Bret Hart guy, so it's pretty cool to see two of my all-time favorites step in the ring together and, run the ropes, brother.
And leave it to us, man, to tie it all together by having Saturday night's main event in Seattle the same week that we just watched Wrestle Dream from Seattle. And man, what an event that was. We don't want to go too far in the weeds. We just covered it on Wrestling Tonight this week, and everyone's talking about Adam Copeland and Rated R Superstar and having Metalingus, Alter Bridge. The whole package is here.
Yeah.
It felt huge last night. I mean, just give your thoughts on it quick.
Oh, it was so great. I think it's a huge signing, and I think, people don't look at it so much like that. I think they're just like, oh, Edge is an AEW, but Edge is out of WWE. Think about that. Somebody posted something today about this is going to be the first video game year where Edge isn't in a game since No Mercy. So think about that 26-year reign of being in the games, being the guy, being a guy in WWE. And he's moving on. He's doing his own thing. I loved it, man. I had such a blast watching that pay-per-view last night. And it was just very, very beautiful, man. Awesome.
Awesome. And you guys can get more coverage of that as obviously the flagship's going to break it down on Thursday mornings. They just did yesterday, so I'm sure you guys check that out. And then obviously, we're covering all you need to know on Wrestling Tonight, but we're also be covering tonight Saturday night's main event 14 from January 2nd, 1988 from the Capitol Center in Landover, Maryland. Headlined by Hulk Hogan versus King Kong Bundy again. This time he has Andre the Giant in his corner for the WWF Championship. But we also get Strike Force, which we know is Tito Santana and Rick Martel, taking on the Bolsheviks, Nikolai Volkov and Boris Zukov with Slick in a 2 out of 3 falls match for the WWF Tag Team Championship. So this feels like, we were talking about it like it was a novelty, like, awesome, they're doing 2 out of 3 falls. It seems like the Tag Team Championships were exclusively defended, Belcaster, in 2 out of 3 falls match, and that's the norm here, which I wouldn't mind if they brought that back. I think it's damn cool.
I'm with you, man. I think it's really awesome, and it's really refreshing. You could see how much they care. I think this is where the weight of WWF used to care about their tag team division came from, because these 2 out of 3 fall matches on primetime television are fantastic, man. And I think it's a good way to showcase the talent by giving them these smaller matches, but in a longer journey, right? So you're getting good 10 minutes maybe out of them, but you're getting really, really solid packed 10 minutes. I love it, man.
So last week we covered a 2 out of 3 falls match, and it was the Bulldogs versus the Hart Foundation, and obviously we know championship matches that the title can't change hands on a DQ, but since it was 2 out of 3 falls, the first fall was a DQ, and then it wound up being that the Bulldogs won 2 straight falls, but the referee didn't let the title change hands because of the first fall being DQ. So your thoughts on that being, I mean, they did like a false finish similar to when Jericho won the title in 99 or when Ambrose won the title from Triple H, and they did a quick just to kind of test to see how they would react. What were your thoughts on that? I know you watched, even though you weren't on it.
Absolutely. No, I actually loved it. I thought it was a different, unique version of a technicality that we got in wrestling. We don't really see that often. And it's funny that it happened in the first bout of the match, so it's, it's the rest of the match really didn't even matter at that point, but it added a different flavor to it and something I haven't seen really. So it was I didn't mind it. I thought it was actually pretty unique and cool.
So before we get into the happy hour, we're going to remind you guys each week we're going to go through all the results of Saturday night's main events. We're going to go through the Dave Meltzer newsletters that I have the hard copy of, give you all the context you need to keep you updated on all the happenings, build that road around it from 1987, 1988, so you know exactly what's going on in the world of wrestling. And the newsletters, we try to build the context of what else is going on, not just in Titan sports, other things going on. And the newsletter certainly has a lot of juicy information about what's happening in AWA, Mid-South, what's going on throughout every different territory, including Japan and Mexico, but we're not going to cover all of it. But I do recommend, if you guys have the opportunity, I know that Meltzer's been releasing the books in all these different capacities of putting the newsletters together, obviously edited to take out, as he's saying, his bad humor. Obviously junk food dog's probably going to come out of it. And some of the dated jokes that make him look bad. But if you have the opportunity to like go on Amazon or whatever, or go to the Observer website, f4w.com, try to find these things because, man, it is just captivating to read these. And I know I'm like whatever, people call me Dave Meltzer fanboy or whatever. I just love the history of wrestling and reading it in real time, being written that week about as these WrestleManias build up. I don't think there's anything better, and there's no other document that lives to build that context in wrestling.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think that's probably my most fascinating part of doing the show, and Shadow Nostalgia in general, is the newsletter. I think we get so much more out of the newsletter than you possibly could think somebody would be writing about in 1987. It's insane and very well put together. Yes, the jokes are not that great, but the content is, and that's what matters the most.
So with that being said, let's get to the happy hour and hear what Dave Meltzer had to say in November of 1987.
Happy hour.
Oh, brother Daddy, don't choke me out anymore.
Dusty Rhodes leading the way in for the happy hour. And this is a brief one from November 23rd, 1987. And Meltzer says Titan taped its Saturday night main event on November 11th before a sellout crowd of 16,000 at the Seattle Center Arena. He said Jesse Ventura will be doing the color on this card instead of Heenan, which could make it an improvement over the last show, although the match didn't sound that hot for the most part this time. Only reason I put that in this as a highlight was 16,000 running a market like Seattle. Crowd was hot when we watched it, and obviously they dub over the commentary after we did learn that throughout the beginning of the season that they're editing in post-production. They have about a week to put it out there, sometimes a little bit more when they have like a month in between, which is so ballsy. Like when they tape the Saturday night's main event that's supposed to air after WrestleMania 3, before WrestleMania 3, how that is chaotic to me. But anyway,
very much so. Yeah.
16,000 in the building. Not too bad.
Not bad at all, man. I mean, we clamor for numbers like this nowadays. So good to see it taking part in the 80s, doing their job.
So we also have Ted DiBiase, and he's a highlight of this newsletter and a highlight during this time because he becomes a hot button issue. He winds up in the main event at WrestleMania 4, going for the title against Macho Man. He could definitely be the champion. And I think a lot of ways, maybe we didn't think how close it actually was where he would be the guy. And we'll talk about that a little bit further. But Ted DiBiase returned to action on November 10th. And from all reports, he is 100%. So he was injured. He was kind of banged up, but they see him as a big draw. They got him over here. He was not a WWF lifer. They targeted him. They wanted to bring him over to the territory. He was, of course, thrown with the $1 Million Man gimmick eventually. And he became synonymous with this era of wrestling, and he'll be a part of the angle that we're going to cover next week at Full with Andre and Hogan right in the middle of it, trying to purchase the title. And again, we'll discuss that at length. But your thoughts on Ted DiBiase being the top heel, because at the time, he was considered one of the best wrestlers. And when we'll talk about it in the newsletter that's coming up in December about where the rumors are happening, and Meltzer had his fingers on the pulse, knowing exactly what was going to happen with this title being purchased and Andre and Hogan. Your thoughts on DiBiase, first of all, being the best wrestler at this point to ever try to go after the WWF Championship as a professional wrestler. And what are your thoughts on Ted DiBiase, like throughout his legacy, and haven't seen him throughout all these years?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Best wrestler in the world going for the title at the time. Maybe, I don't know. I'm not, I'm not studied in $1 million mannerisms, if you will. But listen, he's a scumbag, and in a good way. He played it so well where you believed it. And even seeing him outside of the wrestling realm, you see that guy walk into a building, you're like, damn. He is villainous. He's got the whole look going down. And that's besides the money. That's besides everything. I remember one time I was at a casino in Vegas and Ted DiBiase was sitting next to us and I had a slot machine. And I was just like, man, like living the gimmick. Like he exudes that $1 million man vibe. So I think it's a great step up to the title picture. And I'm so happy to have Ted DiBiase in our bubble here this year.
Yeah, and he was a guy, if you guys don't know about Ted DiBiase, I mean, running roughshod over All Japan Pro Wrestling, and he was a guy who was tearing it up with Stan Hansen. And then there's also the same thing where, you know, he was with UWF and NWA, and this guy was a wrestler at a time where WWF was void of wrestlers. It was just entertainment. And I think he bridged the gap of, he really became entertaining. He personified that $1 million man gimmick where he's not associated with anything else. And for better or for worse, obviously the WWF WWE machine has always been that propaganda that's going to prop you up, and it's his most memorable character. But in ring work, he's more than just that gimmick. He's a very, very good wrestler that could have been the guy you built a company around.
No, 100%. You talk about his time in Japan and stuff like that. Like, I mean, he was putting in the work out there. It might not show so much here in the WWF, but you know, the Japanese wrestling days of Ted DiBiase were something very, very fond of rewatching. Go back and check that shit out because it is on fire. How good of a wrestler he was outside of the WWE bubble, man. Yeah,
his time teaming with Stan Hansen was awesome too, as the like outsiders in Japan. So go and check that out if you guys have a will and a way to find it. I think it's probably on like a, you know, YouTube. I'm sure there's some old Japan content there. You guys can find it. But we also had Billy Jack Haynes, and he suffered a scare when he collapsed after his match on November 6th at the Nassau Coliseum. The diagnosis was a potassium deficiency and dehydrations, but this dude was gangsta, man. He did not miss any matches. He wrestled all over the weekend 3 or 4 times, and he stayed in that night. So he was carried by Ken Patera in some tag matches, but Billy Jack Haynes even have a hospital visit after collapsing in the back. That is 1987, if I ever could say it.
Yeah, no, he was like, give me a saltine and some water. I'll be fine. Shit off. Like, we got
it's like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids when the kid passes out and they give him a banana. Like, you need some potassium, bro.
Yeah.
So we also have TV tapings being held in Des Moines and Omaha. Johnny Valiant is history as a manager because Greg Valentine is to be managed by Jimmy Hart, and Frenchie Martin now works for Dino Bravo. Woo. So different manager shakeups. And then it's a missing art. And I think it's coming back in wrestling in a lot of ways. And it's a renaissance of managers. And I think AEW does more of the broad scope of different managers. We see obviously Prince Nana, Don Callis. We saw Tully Blanchard for a bit. On the WWE side of things, of course, we have Paul Heyman, who's probably the GOAT as far as managers go.
Yeah.
But all of these guys, like for you, if you watch, like, say, a Jimmy Hart or like a Bobby Heenan, these guys are coming out for every match, maybe just changing their attire a bit. Does that take away from the manager-wrestler relationship for you when they're doing? Because you see Bobby Heenan across 4 different segments. Does it take a little bit away for you? Because it does for me a little bit.
Yeah, you know what? I think Bobby was so good at it that it kind of like got brushed under the rug. Like, oh yeah, like who cares? Like he's very entertaining. You could watch Bobby Heenan, especially in these small increments, like these hour-long shows. I could watch Bobby in like 2 or 3 matches. I'm not going to complain about it, but that doesn't go to the same for Jimmy Hart. Jimmy Hart was very, very loud character, and seeing him too much on television kind of take away from the vibe of the not only the matches but the character itself. And I think that what's his name, Bobby the Brain Heenan was so.
Yeah.
I mean, you could eat him up. You could read him like a good book any day of the week, you know, like, and that it really didn't suffer from having him. I think it benefited the television having Bobby there more so because he was such an entertaining cat. So it was cool to see.
Yeah, I agree with that. I just think some of these guys, like maybe they just pale in comparison to Bobby Heenan and Jimmy Hart.
Yeah.
Like when a guy like Frenchie Martin's out there, you're just like, it almost is just like it's a crutch for these wrestlers that need a spokesperson where they're not trusted enough to be out there on their own. So they just, if he's a big bad heel that doesn't have a promo on him, they toss a manager, where that does have its benefit. But I also think it takes a little bit away from what they're trying to build. And I think there's so many guys with managers. If you're a big heel in the 1980s, they just throw you a manager, and so it sort of loses effect unless it's Bobby Heenan. I think he's the exception. I mean, if you look at the Mount Rushmore, there's two heads on it for me. It's Bobby Heenan and Paul Heyman. Like, I don't think there's many others. There's others that can probably shoot for number 3, but those two are locked in for me at 1 and 2.
I'll give Don Callis a little number 3. I mean, his
All right,
time as Cyrus, he's been doing good.
That's bold. Like, I mean, he's still out there earning his keep, so we'll see what happens.
But regardless, still definitely filling out the Rushmore a little bit. It's going to be harder to find that 4th spot than it will be to find the 3rd.
So we have Bob Orton. He missed several shows last week after, quote, being detained by customs officials after a St. Louis Calgary flight. So no other further details. There is a 3-hour-long Bob Orton shoot interview that I'm sure touches upon this. I could not find. I'm sure it had something to do with having something he should not have had on the flight, but I'm sure maybe he covers it over that course of time. But
he had something in his cast.
1987. He just missed several shows, and he just they're like, oh yeah, just come back when we're back in the United States. Like, you don't have to go to the house. No big deal.
Whatever, it's all good.
And we go to the December 21st, 1987 newsletter, and this is a full-blown love story, Belcaster, and I wish we had the soft music to play in the background, because it seems like this is the moment Dave Meltzer fell in love with Japanese wrestling. And as a personality test and being able to find clues in someone's history, you can tell this dude is smitten over professional wrestling in Japan.
Here,
this is what we're going to talk about. We can
rock this in while you're talking. There you go.
So this is Dave Meltzer here on December 21st. It says, I've been following this business for over 17 years, and I thought I'd seen it all. But I had never seen anything like what I saw Saturday night. The All Japan Women's Wrestling Association put on one of the most entertaining shows and the best wrestling I've ever seen. Nothing even comes close. There are no words I can use to convey the atmosphere and action that the promotion delivers, or just how effective Nagayo and Matsumoto are. While admittedly, the live crowd that attends their events is hardly a demographic cross-section of the crowd as teenage girls, but to their audience, these girls are over to the point that a US fan would have to see it live to even get a concept of what I'm trying to say. Dump is the best heel in wrestling. Whoever is second place isn't even close. As for Chigozu, Hogan certainly comes the most intimate, but the best isn't half as good. But you probably have to use Madonna or Bruce Springsteen at the peak for comparison.
Woo.
The rally lives and dies with every move she makes. We saw a crowd crying at one point in the show, and then foremost, we saw a 50-minute notes match of nothing but high spots in a group that never let up for a 3-hour show. I'm bringing this up because I'm voting for a Chigusa as Wrestler of the Year, although I will vote for Hogan as the top babyface, with Chigusa second. After all, I respect that Hogan's appeal is more broad-based, and he has a better power. Even Chigusa's reaction live blows the Hulkster away.
Wow.
So this was crazy. Like, we're going to talk about the match because he talks about the match, this 10-woman tag match that he covers here. He went over there. He watched this event and as a one-off, and he talks a little bit about just this stigma that surrounds this promotion of women's wrestling. And a lot of the eulogies that we've been talking about Terry Funk, and everyone's been coming out with stories, and Meltzer was very close with him. And he was on Jericho's podcast, which was an excellent listening. And he was talking about one of Terry Funk's things is he had his finger on the pulse of the future of wrestling. And he was telling everybody, you need to check out All Japan Women's Wrestling.
That's crazy.
And everybody was laughing. I'm like, no, that's not. And he's like, dude, this is the best wrestling. And this is the future of wrestling, to the point where he supported it like none other. And a guy like Terry Funk, he can almost see he's almost seeing in different colors. Like, he's able to see things that other people can't see. This was interesting to me, and it has me wanting to do a deep dive on All Japan Women's Wrestling. I don't know if you feel the same. Music essentially made me want to do it as well.
Yeah, no, listen, I'd be super, super down. It sounds so cool, and I love when you find that thing for the first time. You know what I mean? Like when you find that alternative that completely blows your mind, takes you. It's like, oh, I listened to AC/DC and Led Zeppelin, but then you find your heavy metal or like your subgenre that completely fucks your world up. That's what I feel like Japanese women's wrestling probably was in '87. You know, it had to have been so badass to finally like fall in love with something different for the first time.
So there's a whole bunch of stuff about Japan. We'll cover it again, but I'm going to bounce around the newsletter to him talking about All Japan women's promotion again. And he said, trying to describe it won't be easy. We saw a Sunday matinee show at the December 6th Korakuen Hall in Tokyo with 2,400 teenage girls jammed in an 1,800 seat arena, breaking every fire law known to humanity. It was the best live crowd I've ever seen in at least 3 years, and the main event was by far the most fantastic match I've ever seen live. I'd say without a question it was more significant than any match held in the U.S. in the history of the business. Insane to say that at this point.
Yeah.
It was a 12-girl tag team match with the most falls before deciding the winner. The match went 50 minutes of nothing but high spots, and the crowd was screaming at double the level of Hogan's posing routine for the entire time. When Nagaya was squaring off against Lioness Asuka, the roar was louder than you hear in the 7th game of the NBA Championship Series with 18 seconds left and the home team down by 1. I've never experienced anything like the energy that comes out of the crowd, and the girls in the ring are every bit as loud as the crowd. The girls on TV on the Fuji network, and while they consistently draw 7s plus on Saturdays afternoon of the week we were there, they drew an 11.3 rating. To give you an example of the popularity of this group in Japan, the rating for one show is higher than all of McMahon's syndicated shows in the U.S. put together. It's roughly the same as when the rating Vince's best Saturday Night Main Event NBC drew exceptionally well. So it's not an outlandish statement when I compare the importance of Chigusa with Hogan. So,
damn,
absolutely insane. And he also says it's the Japanese fans and reporters we met could not understand why we were so interested in the girls card. There's a negative stigma about the girls, at least in wrestling. But they're obviously, I mean, atmosphere is everything. We've all been somewhere where the atmosphere is like intoxicating. And the fact that if it was to that level, if you were there, people like when you watch the videos of the Beatles at Shea Stadium and all that, you know, the sound system is garbage, but the energy you're feeding off where people are living and dying with every single note that the Beatles were playing. And here, every single move that these ladies were doing in a 50-minute match, which like, put context in that 1987, that wasn't happening. They weren't going these Broadways, and certainly women weren't doing that. We're seeing on the WWF side of things how they treat women's wrestling. It just isn't this. No,
that's insane, man. The only thing I could compare his words to about the vibe was like going to see CM Punk come back,
right?
Like being in that, like can't hear the music. It's so loud. The crowd is just engulfing, falling in love with every second of it. And I mean, that's the love of pro wrestling though, you know, and any form of art that you get to go see live, you find that moment in time that, you know, suspends your belief and makes you fall in love. And like, that's the beautiful part about pro wrestling.
So before we get into the stuff happening with Titan, I'm going to leave you guys with this. Cause again, he's talking about being in Japan for a couple days here. And he said, Japan is a fantastic place. Where else can you go into a bar or restaurant? And nobody in the area has ever heard of Joe Montana, yet there isn't a person in the place who doesn't know who Abdullah the Butcher is. He says, as everyone knows, wrestling is a big business in Japan, and most experts realize what happens in the industry in Japan precedes what happens in this country by several years. If we were to go back about 7 years in Japan, the toys, the dolls, record albums, and even Hulkamania were a big deal before anyone in the U.S. could have ever envisioned them. While many give Vince credit for incredible genius in marketing wrestling, in reality, Vince had made several tours in Japan in 1984 and simply tried to recreate, aka copy, what had already been done and did so successfully. Hogan is a national hero, but he's merely an American version of Antonio Inoki with an ego every bit as large. The wrestling albums, dolls, shirts, and the rest were the outgrowth of things in Japan that had done in the early 70s. He continues Vince's extensive attempts to push women's wrestling, which ultimately failed every time, resulted from seeing what big business women were in Japan. Unfortunately, the only thing Vince didn't import to WWF was the work ethic of the Japanese wrestlers. So again, this brings me back to, and I talked about this on Wrestling Tonight with Chad, referencing this quote, just how everyone, and going back to Adam Copeland showing up in AEW and how everyone, there's a certain sect of fans who look at the Turnbuckle Tavern page where it's posted and there's people saying that they feel betrayed, that they feel like he should have been a WWE lifer, that WWE was the genesis of what pro wrestling is. And that's just uninformed nonsense that people don't understand where wrestling existed. This right here is from someone that was living in the time, covering wrestling very closely. And it's okay that Vince did this. And in a lot of ways, he did it better than the way the Japanese did it. They brought it to a new level. But to act like Vince was doing something revolutionary on his own, he was influenced by other people. Whereas AEW is also influenced by other people, but doesn't change the growth and the influence they're going to be having on the business today and also in the future.
Yeah, no, and sometimes getting those influences make the product more enjoyable. A la AEW, I mean, they follow so much routine from what we've covered here on Shot of Nostalgia, just as it is. I mean, how many times have we gone off of a Dynamite the same way Nitro's ended? How many times have we gone?
Right.
You know, how many times has a Collision opened like a Saturday Night's Main Event? Like you borrow from things to try to make the proper formula for the damn Krabby Patty, and that's how you do it.
Exactly. And I think all these people that are they're trying to say it's almost like Derek Jeter not playing for the Yankees. You're not understanding the landscape, because Edge going to AEW is better for every professional wrestler, because in a lot of ways, I think AEW is very legitimate. I think people look at it.
Yeah.
You can mark the moment as Wembley. You can mark it as Punk. You can mark it as Moxley. Whatever you want to mark it as, they're already legitimized to the point where they are legit competition. But for a lot of the casuals that sit on the other side of the fence that are still leaning on the AEW is a t-shirt company, Edge was their guy only a few short months ago. He is a legacy, historic, Mount Rushmore type of Hall of Fame act in WWE. So there's no denying when he chooses to come over to AEW, it hurts because that's your guy. And I think people that look at it from the perspective of he turned his back on the company, like, no, he did what he wanted to do for himself. And you should appreciate him as a fan of Edge. Adam Copeland, he is a creative source, an artist painting on the canvas in the ring. He's allowed to do it where he wants to do it.
100%. And he should do it wherever the hell he wants to do it. I love somebody posted a comparison of his return at the Royal Rumble and his face when he came out last, at Wrestle Dream, and it was the exact same face, like that. Whoa, what the fuck? Like, and good for him. Who are we to shit on it, and why shouldn't we be enjoying it? It's just like everybody within the last 6 months. I mean, we had CM Punk get fired. We had Jade Cargill get signed by WWE. We had Edge come over to AEW. I mean, this is all huge business, man, and the business is good. There's nothing to complain about as a wrestling fan. I'm happy. I would hope the rest of the world would just be happy with it.
Agree, but we'll bring it back to 1987 here, and coming out of Thanksgiving has seen the business continue its doldrums. Although everyone that Meltzer talks to loves DiBiase, the plain fact is his matches with Hogan aren't doing the company business they should be doing. Although they have heated up, as I've said on TV, as I said before, TV ratings are the most important indicator that the public's interest in Titan have not fallen. This means that Titan's current feuds aren't getting their audience as juiced up as they once were doing well at the gate. But he compares it to Jim Crockett Promotions, which is floundering right now with Dusty at the helm. And he says Titan generally does the best thing it can do, not the second best. So they are looking to strap the rocket to Lex Luger. Meltzer saying, and everyone probably agreed, that Lex Luger could have used another year or two as a heel to kind of fine tune his in-ring work and figure it out, because he's made strides in the last year. He's just not a good wrestler at that point. But they strapped the rocket because they were desperate, because business is so down. So he's comparing the patience on WWF side, where they would do the right thing no matter what, even if it didn't benefit them in the immediate. Not sure if that mindset still exists today for WWF. I'm not sure if that still is the mantra that they abide by, but we all know that patience is virtue. We know that patience will eventually watch the flowers bloom. And if you rush it, it's not going to work. And I think we're seeing a lot of the slow build. Like, we're watching the Mega Powers thing grow. We're watching Hulkamania get, for better or for worse, be supported and fed over and over again.
Yeah.
But we're watching this, this effect is now, and you can kind of do the apple, the chicken or the egg, or, apple or the orange, or whatever you want to compare it to. Is Jim Crockett Promotions struggling because WWF's existence, or is WWF succeeding because people were looking past what the old way of wrestling was? I guess it's one of those conversations you have to have.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it could go either way. I mean, obviously it could go towards WWF just, taking advantage of people being down on their luck and just taking people's talent, or it could just be that old flag is slowly being lowered and new flags being raised. It happens, changing the times, man. I mean, it happens with every business, everything. A few months ago we had Twitter, now it's X. It's part of life, man.
So he finishes up here talking about what I was saying, preempting the future, and says, I don't know what of this has aired and what hadn't, but here's what I've heard about a big angle involving DiBiase and Hogan. Said DiBiase offers Hogan 7 figures to give up the belt, and Hogan thinks about it and says he'd love to help his family with the money, but he can't turn down and let down all the kids, so he turns down the money. Then Ted agrees with Andre and Heenan that if and when Andre wins the title, he will sell the title to Ted for 7 figures. Meltzer continues, the whole idea of buying and selling the belt is stupid, but it's not as stupid with Titan because Titan is entertainment and makes no pretense of being sports, so it shouldn't be judged on sports terms. If this happened in NWA, it would be a lot stupider. This should all lead to WrestleMania. I will bet the rumors start flying there since Hogan is finally scheduled to leave wrestling for months after Mania 4 to do a movie. That does not mean they won't go without a champion for 3 months, but the rumors will be everywhere. I will bet that Andre will beat Hogan and sell the belt to Ted, which would be ironic that for the first time in WWF history, a great wrestler would be champion. So if you were reading this in, again, December, this happens 2 months from here. And everything goes down pretty much the way he said it.
Yeah.
So it might have got ruined. I think a lot of the surprise gets ruined when you know what's going on. So, but he was spot on. So whatever his source was at this time,
yeah,
they divulged everything. That was detail for detail, aside from offering it to Hogan. I mean, maybe he did offer it to Hogan like in passing, but Hogan never would have considered it because he's such, clean cut.
Yeah, Dave got all this information from somebody at the Japanese bar, actually, when they were just talking about Abdul the Butcher. He's like, oh, no. He's like, Ted's good. We love Ted.
Selling the title is such an interesting concept to me. And it always resonated with me. And I know they recognize Andre's reign. I think it does exist. But it also, and I understand the point is you can't really put the title on Andre because how are you getting it off of him? It's one of those things where he didn't need, like Piper didn't need the title, but it's kind of a what if scenario. I think it would have been cool to do almost what Christian and Luchasaurus did, what did with the TNT title before Christian actually won the title officially, by having DiBiase hold the title, but Andre's officially the champion. I think that could have been fun.
No, absolutely, and I think wrestling fans all over the world love a good David versus Goliath story. And I think you could pitch that with anybody against Andre with the size he was. I mean, Hogan come back and be David versus Goliath, like no matter how you fine tune it, the story of the giant with all the gold, and getting his up and comings, and the challenger coming to take that away from him. I think that's just good storytelling.
So if you guys are interested in All Japan Women's Wrestling Association season of Shot Nostalgia, you let me know. We'll cover Nagayo and Matsumoto. Like I would love to do it. I might just watch in my free time. A lot of times I'll just, go on YouTube and I'll watch these All Japan playlists or these old school Japanese wrestling playlists with Tiger Mask matches and things like that. I fall into a rabbit hole. And now I want to be able to find this match he's talking about, but also check out Nagayo.
Yeah.
Like, I wonder if it still resonates. And maybe one of those experiences that I'm curious what he thinks about today. Obviously, he has a lot more wrestling that he's experienced. I wonder how this still ranks in his mind, or where some of these matches rank in star ratings and all that comparison, because he was gushing, dude. Like he's never, he doesn't speak in indefinites like this, where he just says like, this is the best thing I've ever seen. He always says it was good, but maybe this is the bar. Maybe what he's trying to hit again is all the way back in 1987, being a young guy in Japan with 2,800 people in an 1,800 seat arena where it's jam packed and people are screaming and he has to wear earplugs. Like maybe that's what he's chasing, and it's never going to quite meet it. And that's why he's so affectionate about Japanese wrestling. Who knows?
Yeah, that was until he saw Kenny Omega wrestle for the first time, and then he found it again.
And then it was love all over again.
Over again.
You could have two true loves, and one was All Japan Women's Wrestling, and then one's Kenny Omega.
The embers started to burn with All Japan, and then it just moved on to Kenny Omega, and then AEW, and all roads lead to all. In the beginning of the title, it worked out great.
Well, let's get back to Seattle, Washington, the Seattle Coliseum. Let's break down Saturday night's main event, number 13 from November 28th, 1987. Let's get our fix.
Get your fix.
All right, Seattle, Washington. It's probably raining on this day. This was taped on November 11th, 1987. This aired on November 28th, 1987. Our current champs are as followed. World champion being Hulk Hogan. He won it back on January 23rd, 1984. Our IC champion is Honky Tonk Man. He won it back on June 2nd, 1987. Our World Tag Team champions are the Strike Force. They won it back on October 27th, 1987. And our women's champion is Sensational Sherry. She's no Nagayo, but she won it back on 7/24, 1987. And we lead in with Vincent Kennedy McMahon and Jesse the Body Ventura lead us in. Interesting outfits, amazing commentary. Cover us through our opening match here, dude. We got George Steele taking on Danny Davis. Like,
man,
appetizer
wild,
for all appetizers.
Yeah. Absolutely wild. But I do want to throw out Vince. This is the first time Vince is kind of looking more Vince. Like, he's a little more jacked this time around. He's more straight. He's got the suit on. He's got a little deeper voice. Like, I'm feeling it. I mean, we're very, very far away from the chairman, but we're starting to see the little seed sprinkled here, which is great.
Absolutely.
But this match was just absolute dog shit. It was absolutely what you would expect. George Steele wins by disqualification. There was nothing here. Like I didn't know what they were going with. I didn't know what they was doing. But listen, it was cool to see Danny Davis kind of doing his thing, and we all know how much I love George the Animal Steele.
Well, this match was set up from like the last Saturday's main event that obviously Danny Davis cost Steele to lose that lumberjack match with Randy Savage back in April, and is based on revenge. That's all it is. He doesn't get much of it, man, because like this is a DQ finish. So Davis winds up kicking the ref, as you mentioned. The DQ happens, and
got hot with ref. Yeah.
The other thing is too, what I've noticed by going through all the appearances for George Steele throughout a Saturday Night Main Event run, this is his only win of 6 appearances. So this is the one time he got to win, and it wasn't even a pinfall. It was a DQ.
That just shows the talent in George the Animal Steele. I kid, but no, I had nothing good. Like, I'm not a big Danny Davis guy. He's great, whatever. But this was the worst opener for Saturday night's main event, I think, that we've covered in our entire timeline.
Well, this is George Steele's last Saturday Night Main Event match, so this is kind of the finale. This was a typical match that he's ever had, so this is, not great, but DQ finish just sets the tone for the night, but leads us into our match here that is very highly touted. One match we're looking forward to. Randy Savage with Miss Elizabeth taking on Bret Hart with Jimmy Hart and Jim Neidhart. So we know this is set up because Bret cost Savage the IC title at the last Saturday Night's Main Event, so they're letting stories continue to progress throughout these events, which is nice to see. And to start the match, Neidhart and Jimmy Hart, they confront Elizabeth, and they get Savage to come down and protect her. So Savage is full-blown babyface now at this point with the mega powers. And then we go to work, man. We get Savage pulling Bret out to the floor. He rams him shoulder first into the ring post, and then they get back in the ring. Savage then goes for a charge, and then Bret chokes Savage in the corner. They go back and forth for a bit here, and there's some good stuff. And Bret Hart's not as fully realized self as I said before, but you could still see the foundation that's in place for him to be a top guy. He has the ability to hang with a guy like Randy Savage, who at the time is one of the best workers in the business. Yeah. The ability to, like we talked about before, get a serviceable match out of George Steele. They made some magic here, and they had the ability to they had some time as well, which was interesting because when I first turned this on, I expected it to be, typical 5-6 minutes because Bret Hart at this point with the Hart Foundation, they are just slimy heels and they are just taking advantage of people. And there's a lot to be said about the interference aspect, especially seeing Jimmy Hart and Jim Neidhart outside. You're like, okay, this is going to be a schmoz. But it really wasn't, man. They definitely went back and forth at the end, and seeing some of the submission stuff with the half crab from Bret and then Savage getting to the ropes. They gave Bret a lot here. They really did, because and you got to remember, Bret is a tag team wrestler at this point. He hasn't been IC champion yet. He hasn't been the guy who's on a singles run. He's still a tag guy. For him to hold his own against Randy Savage, even in a losing effort, it took Randy Savage getting a cradle for a 3, which is, you could make the argument it's a kind of not a cheap win, but a fluke win that's not definitive. And you could tell that they felt a certain type of way about Bret. And I would love to hear, maybe there's some footage out there of Randy Savage discussing this, or Bret Hart talking about this match. This felt like Randy Savage was almost giving, I don't know, his stamp of approval on a guy like Bret to take it on in the next couple of years to be the guy, because you could see it here.
Yeah, no, this is something I really miss about past pro wrestling, because modern day pro wrestling doesn't do it enough, is like these bigger bouts with somebody who is a Macho Man Randy Savage or an Edge, letting like a buddy, or not buddy, but a Nick Wayne come in and like kind of up the guard, like showing off like, oh yeah, this kid's got it. And I like, this is my hot take here, but I enjoy this version of Bret Hart more than I do Hitman version, because this is almost like him trying to prove himself, and you're getting a
Right.
little bit more oomph out of him. And I loved it. I thought this match was phenomenal. One of the best things we've covered on Shot of Nostalgia ever, but it was fantastic. It was a really, really great network television show or match, man.
And it has me thinking about what could have been, especially, 94, WrestleMania 10 comes around, and obviously Macho's wrestling Crush, but Bret Hart's involved in the title picture. And what could have been, man, if you main evented a WrestleMania or like gave them 20 minutes on a big show, whether it be SummerSlam or otherwise, when Bret Hart was really rolling. I know you said you enjoy this version of Bret Hart, but I think he's still in like the growing phase as far as being presented as a top guy. And imagine when he's fully that guy versus Randy Savage, who feels like he's always been that guy, going against each other in a big match. And they even had times where they were on the same roster in WCW. Like, it always feels like two ships in the night, never really got the opportunity. Of course, they've locked up, probably been involved in other tag matches. This is not the only time they've ever touched in the ring. It just feels like a missed opportunity that you could have had a really meaningful program. I feel the same way about Shawn Michaels and Macho Man.
Yeah,
like I feel like
100%.
that could have been a major program, that passing of the torch. And I know that was discussed before he was essentially pushed out for WrestleMania 10, saying he was too old to be an active competitor. And I know we discussed that in 96, but it would have been really cool to see. But this match was awesome. Like you said, I think the other fact is that we don't get to see matches like this on Saturday Night's Main Event. So that was another
100%.
piece. And we get the Gaga after. Hart Foundation comes in. They try to ambush Savage after the match. But Savage has Jimmy Hart's megaphone. So he turned it around on them. Crowd cheers. So everybody looks good. And we also get an awesome pile driver. Bret gave Savage a great pile driver for a near fall, which was awesome. And that kind of turned the tide of the match, middle of the match. But this told a really good story in such a brief period of time, just about 12 minutes. It was awesome.
Yeah, no, 100%. It was definitely one of my favorite things I think we've seen on Saturday Night's Main Event in general. And we've covered some badass tag matches, so that goes a long way.
So King Kong Bundy is going after the WWF Championship again. So we're going to get him 2 weeks in a row here. We saw them WrestleMania 2, and these guys had a pretty heated feud. We covered it at length here. We saw the hospitalization of Hulk Hogan by being avalanched in the corner, and King Kong Bundy has now aligned himself with Andre the Giant. So that's been also tied into this interwoven story. That's been a big piece to what we're talking about. So we get a pre-match interview with Bobby Heenan saying he has a big surprise. And we just saw this last week, and it wound up being Andre the Giant coming out. And that was pretty much, nobody expects us to have a title change here. Let's just start with that. We're going into, King Kong Bundy continues to be this guy who's ever looming over Hulk Hogan. But I mean, I'll let you take the lead on this match. This was kind of a paint by numbers match between two guys that really are not, work rate emphasis. They don't have the ability to continue to put on 5-star classics, but this felt like a big match as they went across the ring from each other.
Yeah, no, listen, this was all story to build up the Hogan Andre feud, obviously a little bit more, which is crazy because the fact that you're using a star like King Kong Bundy to just get something over between two other opponents, that's insane because Bundy was a big dude. I mean, obviously not a work rate wrestler, but I mean, he had the appearance, he was rocking and rolling. This was all sorts of fuckery. We got a DQ 5 minutes into it. They restart the match as long as Andre's going to leave, right? But Andre tripped up Hogan, which in a very weird manner too. He did like that side cat paw hook to his leg instead of grabbing like this. But they restart the match and it goes to a count out, man. And I don't know what more you would expect out of these two. The back and forth was decent. Hogan's still running that Hulkamania train, man. I'm not completely over it. I'm still enjoying it. I'm still enjoying the rise, but I wish we would have gotten a little spice of flavor here.
Yeah, and seeing Andre be really limited at ringside.
Yeah,
it's crazy to think that these guys are going to lock up at WrestleMania again. I know they do like the double count out. I believe they do. They wind up both being eliminated from the single elimination tournament at WrestleMania 4. So they're a non-factor in what happens, but they're also going to work again at the main event. We're going to talk about in a little bit.
Yeah.
Andre is very limited. So like you're looking at the top of the card here and there's not a lot of athleticism, and that's going to change very quickly because Macho is going to get his hands on that title and be able to hold it for a year. So that's going to change things. And maybe the perspective of how they see a champion changes. And I think Macho starts to set the tone that It doesn't have to be these big plotting guys. Of course, Macho carries himself like he's one of those big, Marvel superstars, but he's not that big of a guy compared to Hogan and compared to King Kong Bundy and Andre.
100%.
I think Macho, just as much as a guy like Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart, deserve credit for bringing prestige to a smaller, undersized wrestler to hold the championship. Randy Savage was that guy to be able to do it. I understand he walked on his tippy toes. He carried himself larger than life, but he's a guy who set the tone. And I think it all starts in 1988 when things start to go in a different direction, where it's about a little bit, you have to be able to move around the ring and excite people with the moves.
Yeah, no, and like this, I mean, also it's a very kind of taking away from the character of Andre for me too, seeing him in such a minimal, not doing much of a role. So you're already seeing the downfall, not just of the man himself, but the actual character. I think it hurts the character when you're sitting out there in a suit with Bobby the Brain Heenan, and you are this 7-foot giant badass, and you gotta sit there at ringside and claw paw fucking Hogan's feet. It just sucks, man.
Agreed. And before we move too far away from Bret Hart and Randy Savage, I just want to discuss the matches that they've linked up. They've met on pay-per-view once, just to correct myself. And I think I should have known this. I think the Extra Cooler Boys covered it. Bret Hart versus Randy Savage from Slamboree 1998.
Hell yeah.
But that was the only other singles match they've ever had. They've wrestled each other in other tag matches. So they had obviously the one-on-one match they had. The one we just covered was the first time they've ever touched in the ring. And then they were involved in a 8-man tag match on opposite sides. And then they tagged together against Ric Flair and Shawn Michaels in 1992, which I think I found a clip of that on the build to WrestleMania 8. And then in WCW, Bret Hart teamed with Sting to take on Nash and Savage. As I mentioned, the Slamboree rematch, they went one-on-one. And then the final time they've ever touched in the ring was Bret Hart and Hogan teamed together against Savage and Roddy Piper. So I still stand by it was a missed opportunity not to have a major program. I understand they wrestled at Slamboree, whatever, but I don't think it had the same build. It needed to be at like a big event, whether it be
you're talking
Mania,
10 years removed from this match. Like, that's fucking insane.
Crazy. It's a missed opportunity, especially when they were still in the company together at this point. So
yeah, no, it's mind-blowing, man. Absolutely mind-blowing.
So we go to our main event here. It's Bam Bam Bigelow with Oliver Humperdinck defeating Hercules. So Bobby Heenan is still representing Hercules, but thanks to what happened with Hogan, he's too hurt to be out for the match. They make that clear on commentary. Match is very quick here. We have a double count out, but Bam Bam gets back in the ring and he says, dude, that's not finished. Come on. We can't have a match be a double count out. The refs let it happen. They go back at each other, start doing jockeying for position, and we want to Bam Bam press slamming him, delivers the slingshot splash for the 1-2-3. Not a great match. I love Bam Bam. He's a great big man. His better years are still ahead of him. I still think the best time for Bam Bam is in ECW.
1,000%.
There's a lot of Bam Bam stuff. I'm a huge fan of what he's able to do. They didn't give him the time or the resources here, and he's still limited working in this environment. It's like asking someone to do something they're not capable of. They weren't expected to go out there and do the things like Bam Bam goes out there and shows he can move around big time for a big dude jumping around and doing the stuff he did in ECW. They didn't tap into it here because they probably told him. And I know it was blasphemous for big guys to move around the way Bam Bam started to move around and different times. They didn't want big guys being able to do that.
It's insane. Absolutely insane. I felt like they over pushed his character here and not his ability to wrestle. And like, basically mimicking what you're saying here. But like Bam Bam and WWF, especially now, it's not my flavor, man. I don't like his promos. I'm not digging the character, but we see how beautiful the rest of his career gets. I mean, his time in ECW, phenomenal. His time in WCW, phenomenal. It's just weird to see him kind of come out there all hot. I'm going to come and kick your ass. Like, it's just like, it doesn't fit the vibe, but better times are to come. So this didn't completely hinder my Bam Bam fan.
It's almost weird. It's like a time traveler went back in time and he's here. Like, it's almost like he doesn't belong. And the fact that he has an LJN figure, it's weird that he's here. And I understand he's on the roster, but he is involved in some of the wrestling in the late 90s where he fits in that era so much better. And I know he gets more tattoos and like he starts to have a little, but it's still Bam Bam here, and I think with the right booking mind that has an access to Bam Bam, he could have been the biggest star in wrestling. I fully believe that. I think he's a giant cartoon character. I just don't think he's ever was given the keys to the castle, but I think he could have been.
And
especially
listen,
WWF, the way they were pushing the cartoony type of stuff. Like, he could have been this
he
evil villain sitting in a big chair.
time, you know, like he was still over fuck. But like he was my favorite character on the Sega Genesis WrestleMania arcade game. Like I love playing his Bam Bam, you know, like it was super cool. But also throwing him in a match with Hercules isn't doing anybody favors.
It's a good point. Yeah, yeah, and I understand too. Like, people are gonna be like, he wrestled, you know, he main evented WrestleMania 11. Like, okay, he wrestled Lawrence Taylor, like,
yeah,
and lost. You know, what are we talking about? Like, I think Bam Bam could have been the opposite of Hogan if you gave him the opportunity. Like, make him the super evil villain instead of letting King Kong Bundy run it back week after week. I don't know, just
100%. Yeah, no, that's like saying you main evented with fucking Jeff Jarrett and Dennis Rodman. Who gives a shit?
And he did main event WrestleMania. It was Connecticut. I know people like to forget that Mania, but it was the main event, so
it works. Yeah,
maybe I'm wrong. Not a lot of guys. Punk has a main event to WrestleMania. Bam Bam did. All right, let's go to Saturday Night's Main Event number 14 from January 2nd, 1988. This was taped a whole month earlier on 12/7/1987. So Landover, Maryland was the site. The Capitol Center was the place. And we have our current champs are all the same. So don't need to go through them. As I mentioned, Strike Force is the tag champs. So keep that in mind. And we have all our intros here. Jake Roberts and Damien are inviting Fuji and Sika to a New Year's party. Valentine will scramble some bird brains because he's the hammer. We get the Bolsheviks kind of letting everybody know that they disagree with American values. And then Bundy Mania will get his second shot at taking over the world, but Hulkamania stands in the way. And we lead right into it's time for Saturday Night's Main Event. I love these packages. And you could tell we say it week after week, but Collision is so inspired by it.
Yeah.
I just love it as it leads right into, Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting by Elton John. And just all this, like, the feels come back when you watch Collision, especially after covering this.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's my favorite part of Saturdays now is that 5-minute opening window for AEW, because you're just like, oh hell yeah, like FTR, like we're here, we're gonna kick their ass this week, and it like switches like I'm Darby Allin, I'm gonna do a coffin drop. You're like, fuck yeah, I'm this is what I signed up for.
Do you remember what WCW game that was where you would like hover over them with the cursor?
Yeah.
That's what reminds me of
Nitro and Thunder.
And Kevin Nash like, don't pick me.
Yeah,
don't pick me. I don't want to
go pick Stinger. Like, what do you do? It's one of my favorite things. Like Scott Hall's was like, you hit square on the PlayStation controller. He's like, hey yo, Chico, what's up? You want to be the man? Like, he does the toothpick throw. Like, you fucking absolutely love it.
I was just talking to someone about that game the other day, and he was like, I legit never played as Kevin Nash because I just wanted to respect what he was saying. Like, he never played in the game. So
that was such a cool, unique feature. I love that. Like, nobody does shit like that. Like, what a cool, like, little way to like get fun out of it. DDP had a good one too. He's like, hey, what up, bro? I'm DDP. You know you gotta pick me. Like, it's fun shit so like good. That. It's so goofy. Love it.
And I've been seeing all these mods on YouTube for N64 and No Mercy or WrestleMania 2000. They add the AEW roster or like an old school WCW roster.
Yeah.
And I don't know how these people do it, but
I have the ECW one on my computer. I love it. It's No
it
Mercy,
actually has
but
the
it's
same graphics and like same gameplay.
Everything's the same except for the characters are different. They added new shit. Like there's tables. There's like shit you shouldn't have been able to do.
It's crazy. I mean,
64.
The people with like I know it's like old man yelling at the clouds here, but like Raspberry Pi, the ability to put all those games on those little Raspberry Pis and programming and like
the coolest shit in the
world. I would have killed to have that as a child. Like I would have killed to have access to it.
and now you play it. You're like, fuck it. Like I don't even want to play half these games anymore.
I would never leave my house. I'd be watching wrestling on the network and I'd be playing video games on the Raspberry Pi. I would never leave.
That's basically my off time here. All right.
So we lead in Vince McMahon and Jesse, the movie star Ventura, and we get Mean Gene wishing the Hulkster a Happy New Year. Hulkster is not looking in the festive mood. He says the only way he'll be able to have a Happy New Year is if he gets his hands on that big, foul-smelling, rancid, reeking, stinking, grody, gross, icky, loathsome, repulsive, repugnant, rotten Andre the Giant. So,
brother,
hope you enjoyed that one. But another Hogan promo, and they're building the stage. We're a month away, which we'll talk about. We're covering it next week from that main event match against Andre for the championship with the double refs. And I'll let you guys know at the end, but it wasn't a Saturday Night's Main Event. And for the longest time, and I know it might be like the Mandela effect or whatever they say, but I always just assumed because I could see the colors, it is red, red, white, and blue. There were 5 iterations of the main event that aired on NBC that were just called the main event. And they are in between. They're like scattered between the lineage of Saturday night's main event, and this one falls right between. It will be the first event we cover next week, and we will cover that in full. So I'm excited to talk about Andre and Hogan, the fallout of that, everything that happened with the Dave and Earl Hebner, all that stuff. So it's gonna be exciting.
It is very exciting. I'm pumped. I love the use of verbiage here, though, with the foul-smelling, rancid, reeking, stinking, grody, gross, icky, loathsome, repulsive, repugnant, rotten Andre the Giant Brother. We're coming for you.
So we lead into this tag team championship match, and again, it's 2 out of 3 falls. So you guys are getting used to the lay of the land here. The Strike Force, Tito Santana and Rick Martel, defend against the Bolsheviks, which is Nikolai Volkov and Boris Zukov with Slick. And this is pretty fun match, man. I gotta say, I mean, as far as, match construction goes, I'm a big sucker for, first of all, hot tags. I think those are one of the most important things in wrestling, to structure 100%. A hot tag, because it's a guaranteed pop, a guaranteed way to get a crowd involved, but also having the face be in danger. I think that's also done so well, and they did such a good job of cutting off the ring and making sure the Strike Force didn't have access to any sort of resources to get away from the Bolsheviks. So you actually believed the Bolsheviks were going to walk away with the title, and there was a legit fear from the crowd in attendance. They hated the Bolsheviks, that they were going to witness a title change, and I thought it was so well done.
It's like me every time I watch FTR wrestle somebody. I'm like, this is it. They're going to lose the title.
So we see the beginning where the Strike Force, Zukov does submit to give Strike Force the first fall. And then Martel celebrating like he won the tag titles. They're all excited. And at the start of the second fall, Strike Force tries to put Zukov away with a double drop kick, and Martel slams Zukov down for the Quebec Crab again. Volkov breaks it down, and there's no tag, and the ref lets Volkov become the legal man anyway. So like the referee not really doing his job, which is frustrating, especially that the heels get away with it. We see a lot of near falls here. Some great stuff. Volkov hits Martel with a hot shot, follows up with a gun wrench for a 2. Really quick, and then Volkov hits the Gorilla Press backbreaker for another 2. The Bolsheviks are tagging in and out to punish Martel. They're just beating the crap out of him in the corner. At one point, Tito enters the ring, and then Martel eats a double back elbow for the Bolsheviks, and the ref's distracted. So this is like everyone's panicking here. But we see some other stuff here where Martel drops Volkov onto the floor. Santana covers Zukov for the win after there was miscommunication with the team. This was really good, and we get a 2-0 win for the Strike Force, which is another rare thing.
Yeah.
I think 2 out of 3 falls, you're so used to 1-1, but I think they're done so frequently that sometimes 2-0 is more decisive. But there were moments in here where the Bolsheviks had them beat. But this was a really good little match here. Tito Santana and Rick Martel really did a good job together.
Yeah, I did not have it on my bingo card that I'd be a fan of 1980s fucking WWF tag team wrestling as much as I am right now. I really enjoyed it. I think it's very on par with the pro wrestling tag matches we're seeing these days. Keep the 2 out of 3 falls gimmick, man. I'm absolutely loving it. I wish it would do more of this on WWE. I would tune in, because like you're giving. It's an illusion too, because it seems like you're getting more time out of these teams,
but they're like less. Yeah, exactly.
They're like, it's like an 8-minute match, but you're like 2 out of 3 falls, man. It sounds fantastic, and that's I feel it. Like I really do. Like I'm enjoying the shit out of the tag matches with that 2 out of 3 falls stipulation way more than I would be if it was just like, here's the Brood and the Hardys, and it's a DQ. Like
yeah.
Give me something to fall in love with. This is beautiful.
The hot tag to Tito Santana was so good. And like I said before, I know everyone watches wrestling, and probably if you watch wrestling a lot, the hot tag just washes over you. And having been at a lot of independent shows this last year, even going to like AEW shows or WWE, the hot tag is such a guaranteed reaction from the crowd. And if it's done right, it could drive the match and take it to the next level. And this was an example of it. This was so simple where people wanted it so bad. And I think every tag match, I know people make the argument that maybe it shouldn't have hot tags in matches. No, every tag match needs a hot tag in some capacity. And this was the perfect example. If you want to understand really just foundational tag team wrestling, watch this match of Tito Santana sort of clamoring to get the tag and Rick Martel being beat down.
Yeah.
It tells that story. It no matter if you know these guys or you don't, you feel bad for them. And I think by the time Tito gets tagged in, everyone's like, fuck yeah. They're just like, they want it so bad. That's what makes it so good. And
I love it.
I think it's such a simple formula, but sometimes it's people overthink things where sometimes simple is just better. MJF proves that week after week.
Absolutely.
So we got Mean Gene in the back. He's with Mr. Fuji. Fuji's holding a mustard jar. And
mustard.
and he has, Sika pulls out some long Italian bread because he's ready to make a Damien sandwich. He's going to make a sandwich out of the snake. So, okay.
Sounds disgusting.
Well, Sika was eating chicken and shit. Like he was eating like a live chicken last week. So he's legitimately taking the barbarian level of things where just take the snake. Why do you need mustard, dude? If you're a barbarian, eat the snake out of the bag.
Maybe some hot sauce. Don't put mustard on it. What are you, an Italian? Like
the bread looked good though. Long Italian bread.
It looked like one
nice
of those like old like Subway commercials where they pull out the foot-long party sub and you're like, hell yeah, let's go.
Anyway, we got Jake Roberts taking on Sika with Mr. Fuji. So
kind of.
Yeah, quick match here. And of course, Sika misses the charge in the corner. He gets rolled up for the 3 count, which was interesting because it's like, why don't Jake Roberts just DDT Sika? We do see the DDT on Mr. Fuji.
Yeah.
After the match. But I don't understand why Jake Roberts has to roll up Sika. Sika he lost to Hogan. I understand. Jake Roberts hasn't been winning a whole bunch of matches either. He lost to Kamala a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
I know the roll up was a little bit weak to me, especially when Jake Roberts, like, why can't you just have a guy beat someone with their finisher? I don't get it.
Especially somebody of the stature of Jake Roberts. Let him do the DDT. Sika's not going it's not hurting him at all. Like, just let him do the DDT and get on with it. Like, I'd be more here for that than a shitty roll up, especially in a Jake the Snake match.
The other thing is the hat pretty much stays on Mr. Fuji the whole time. And even when the snake is like on him and the crowd's going absolutely nuts, the hat, DDT, everything happens. The hat stays on Mr. Fuji's head.
It's glued. It's like the old bone crunchers. Yeah.
I mean, obviously it stayed on. So I don't know.
He actually doesn't have a scalp underneath. It's just his brain and then the hat. Like,
exactly. So interesting. Yeah, like I said, I think the coolest part was the after the stuff with the snake and the crowd. How into the Damien spot the crowd is. It's such an easy mechanism, and Jake Roberts was able to get over without that. But
yeah,
having the extra just in case the crowd's not really feeling things, you just break the snake out and people go nuts because everyone can know what it feels like to be scared of a snake. Some people no one feels indifferently about snakes. You know what I'm saying? Like there's always it elicits a very strong reaction, whether negative or positive. Some people enjoy reptilian action and some people absolutely despise snakes. And it seems like most people in that audience can't even imagine having that snake on top. Are you on the, like, if you see a snake, are you panicking? Or are you a guy who's
I'm
okay
not gonna
with it?
panic. I might try to grab the fucker, like, and pull it up.
If you woke up and saw, Damien on top of you, I mean, you probably mark out.
That's a different thing. I'd probably be like, I need your autograph and the selfie real quick. And here's
sign
$20.
Sign this Hasbro pack to me right now.
Sign this Jake the Snake foam finger I got. But it's just like, it's always dependent on the circumstance. If I'm going to take a piss in the middle of the night, there's a snake in the toilet, I'm going to freak out. It's going to startle me. It's going to freak me out. But seeing one like on the street, I'd be like, it's a garden snake. I'm going to grab that fucker and throw it in the fucking
big ass snake. All right, so
big ass snake. Anaconda. I will not be Ice Cube in the Anaconda movie. I will be running far the fuck away from that location.
That movie was insane.
It was insane. Yeah, it was a great movie though. It still holds up. I just watched it like
it's a 90s horror film for sure.
It's goofy as fuck, but it's great.
The other thing I'm going to bring it back to is just, man, like when Jake Roberts had the snake bite Macho Man tied to the ropes and like he had a fever and everything. Like I know they took the venom out of the python's teeth.
Yeah.
God damn, dude. Like really, like you had to actually use a real snake. We don't have, I guess there's no way to fake it to make it look, I don't know. Like there's gotta be a better way.
There's no CGI Trons yet. Like we can't do the big snake in the sky in the middle of the arena. I love the story that Jake talks about that with Macho Man though. He's like you need to have this snake bite you right now. And I want to see it. Well, they're like, because Macho Man thought Jake the Snake was trying to kill him. It was a very intense encounter right there.
The insane part too is like we talked about Frankie the Bird and Damien. Like you're going through airport after airport. We watched Bob Orton get caught up from St. Louis to Calgary, and now we have like, keep in mind, Jake the Snake has to carry Damien the fucking snake all over the place with him, like as a carry on. This goddamn snake, he's got to feed the snake. He's got to find crickets or rats or whatever he's got to feed this thing, and he's got to carry it on. Like everyone's annoyed by carrying titles, like, oh, I got another bag, or like, oh, whatever. This guy's a
Merch,
snake.
anything, yeah. And he's
And like the Bulldogs have Matilda, fucking Dynamite Kid came and walked, dude, and his knees busted up. He's come on, motherfucker, come on.
Yeah, come on, I can walk the dog now.
The fucking
Love
dog
it.
needs to piss in the hotel room. You're just like, dude, come on, really?
Yeah, call the front desk. I mean,
I can't get up. I can't get up. I had a 2 or 3 falls match the other day. Oh my
It's gonna be a 4th fall too after I do fucking take the dog for a while.
Exactly. Man. But we got
Beautiful,
Mean
though.
Gene in the back. He's pointing out that Bobby Heenan will not be at ringside with King Kong Bundy because that would go against doctor's orders. And then he explained to us that Hogan hurt Heenan's neck at the last Saturday Night's Main Event a month ago, and he's still wearing a neck brace. So in his place tonight will be Andre the Giant. And then Hogan also didn't cut a promo. He also referenced very timely context, mentioned Ronald Reagan. This was a very 80s promo from Hulk Hogan.
Let me tell you something, Reagan, brother. It's like fucking, yeah, the wildest concept.
But King Kong Bundy, I mean, this has to be his last shot at the title, right? Like, how many opportunities we can give this guy for the title? Where is Jack Tunney? Can we get him to sign off? This will be the last opportunity. I know he beat him by countout, but King Kong Bundy has yet to be able to get that title off of Hogan's waist. But we have Hogan taking on King Kong Bundy, this time without Bobby Heenan, but with Andre the Giant. And this match goes longer.
Wow.
And we have more definitive winner. Heenan caused Hogan to lose to Bundy by countout, as we referenced. Hogan took it out on him by attacking him. And we get this rematch. And this will be Bundy's send-off to Hollywood. So King Kong Bundy, any familiarity with any movie King Kong Bundy was in?
I remember him being on what was it? Married with Children. I think that's why they named the Bundys were the Bundys, and then I think the family across street was the Rhodes. I think it was a very
Pulling his
wrestling.
IMDb up, which his picture is epic right now. He's wearing these these FTR glasses, but I'm pulling up the TV things that he's on. So he definitely had some filmography stuff. So he went 1988. He was in a movie called Moving. So I think that was
him moving out of WWF.
So this was with Richard Pryor. He was in a movie with Richard Pryor from 1988 called Moving, and the context is Arlo accepts what seems to him to be a dream promotion to Idaho. He soon discovers, however, that Moving has its own share of problems. So he's in that movie.
Oh, I do remember that. He was one of the movers.
And then he was with Married with Children. You're absolutely right. He was.
Yeah.
Oh, that's insane. I did not know that.
little.
Wait, so how many episodes in Married with Children was he in?
It's got to be. I think it was at least like 2 or 3.
I'm looking at it right now.
He played King Kong Bundy in one of them. I remember that. Like he was wrestling, but that's why they named the Bundys the Bundys. It was because the guy that wrote the Married with Children was a big wrestling fan. Because the guys with the family across the street was the Rhodes, and they were named after Dusty Rhodes, and then you had King Kong Bundy. It was pretty cool.
That looks to be the only movies he and show he was in. So like his
That's
time to Hollywood. So he was in the Richard Pryor movie. So I mean, I'm not sure how that did at the box office, but good for King Kong Bundy paving that road. Everyone in WWF is trying to get a piece of Hollywood pie, but we get Ted DiBiase taking over as Andre's partner in crime to help take that WWF championship away from Hogan. We know that's going to happen. So Hogan slams Bundy head into the 3 of the 4 corners, and then Big boots him out to ringside to start. Hogan then hits a series of elbows and connects with a running clothesline. Typical Hogan Bundy match here. We get a lot of stuff going back and forth, and kind of the thing comes to an end here where Bundy reverses the corner whip, and then the ref and Hogan takes the avalanche. Bundy then goes for the splash, but Hogan just rolls out of the way, punches Bundy out to ringside. Here comes Dave Hebner. He comes down as a replacement ref after that, the ref bump. He tells Hogan and Bundy to get back in the ring while they get the injured ref out. And keep in mind, too, Hogan was hospitalized from the avalanche. The fact that an avalanche would hit the ref is a big deal because, like,
should have killed him. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, by context of that, Hogan was hospitalized. The referee should never be.
That ref's still dead right now.
Ref, if you listen carefully, he's still snoring very, very, very. So the end sees Bundy releases a hold in a chin lock and then delivers an avalanche to Hogan. This time he delivers another avalanche and takes forever to the corner. He's too busy doing the hand gestures. Big splash by Bundy. Gets almost a 3 count. Gets his full sequence. The fans gas. Everyone sat up. They thought it was there. Hogan gets up out of the pin. He begins the Hulk up, which is absolutely insane after the avalanche. Something that just hospitalized him. Now he's able to Hulk up, but whatever. It's Hulk Hogan. He runs Bundy to the corner, hits the leg drop. 1, 2, 3. 12 minutes and 9 seconds. This match was definitely serviceable, but the end of the match too is building up the story, man, for the main event. We got Andre getting on the ring apron, and Hogan is begging Andre to get in the ring. He's like, dude, get in here with me right now. I want to finish this. Andre climbs back down to the apron and gives Hogan a false sense of security. And when Hogan starts posing, turns his back to Andre. The Giant gets in the ring. I don't know how you missed him coming in the ring. He's so slow.
How do you not feel it? Yeah.
Beats the shit out of Hogan. He chokes Hogan to the mat, and here come the Bulldogs running down. Andre no-sells them, giving the double noggin knocker. He throws them to the floor. Andre returns to choking Hulk Hogan. Here comes Jake Roberts, Junkyard Dog. Here comes the tag champ Strike Force. They come down. Andre finally stops on his own fruition to stop choking him, and then Hacksaw Jim Duggan runs in and wallops him with the 2x4 a couple times, and that really has no effect. Andre grabs the belt. He poses with it, and he faces Hogan and, throws it back in his face to the back. And this is the build to Hogan Andre, I guess, 2, right?
Yeah.
This is the main event that's going to be happening. We're going to cover it next week. What a send-off. This should have been the last part of the show, but they still have one more. Can you imagine they have a Greg Valentine, Coco Beware match after that segment?
Yeah, I mean, how do you follow Edge coming out last night? Like, you're going to put another match? Like, what do you do?
Right. Put the ring back together, everybody.
Hacksaw just came out and smacked Andre with the 2x4 like 5 times, and Andre's like, "No, I'm good. Like, I don't need. Give me the toothpick." Like, starts picking out a turkey leg or something out of his teeth. Like, it's fucking insane. Poor.
So, I mean, amazing build. Great segment at the end. Like I said, the match was secondary to the stuff going on, and what they did was they heated Andre up so quickly. Like, he was someone, as we were looking at, as this guy moving around slowly at the ringside, causing chaos and DQs. From that to this, where he destroyed Hogan, he took on the whole roster and no-sold everything and held the belt up. As a fan, if you're watching this at the time, how do you not think that Andre's walking away with that title next time they meet?
100%. I mean, you awaken the monster. That's what it felt like. Like, Andre was just this dude in a suit last week, dude in a suit this week, until that moment. And then Hogan brought it out of him. Andre snapped. Fucking everybody and their moms and 2x4s came out to try to stop him, and it wasn't happening, man. Like, Andre didn't give a shit, and it adds such a fierceness to the Andre character that you're like, oh, anything can happen and probably will happen when this motherfucker's in the ring. I'm here for it.
So we have pretty much a WWF Superstars main event here. Greg Valentine with Jimmy Hart defeating Coco Beware in 7 minutes and 30 seconds. I don't have to go over. I mean, Coco winds up, getting locked in the figure 4. He taps out. And then pretty much after the match, Valentine reapplies the figure 4. Beefcake comes back out for the save. Valentine leaves. And then Jimmy Hart hangs around to beg Beefcake off. And he gets some of his hair clipped off. And you beg the question, why didn't he just bail? Like, why?
Yeah.
Jimmy Hart just looking for a free haircut?
Especially with those beautiful locks that he was rocking back in the day.
Exactly. So before we end the show, they go back to Andre, which is the right thing to do. What they should have done was go off the air anyway, but they go back to Andre. So the lasting image is Andre gloating about how great it was to choke out Hogan. And Hogan's unable to talk because his larynx is too damaged to speak. And that's the last thing we see here.
Brother.
So, I mean, the Hogan-Andre feud is being heated up, and I love watching this unfold. Like, I didn't obviously watch it when it was happening. All we know are the snippets. We know the moments. We know the matches. We know the stories. But seeing these be built up with the subplots of these other guys and these other players in the fold, similar to the stuff that the Bloodline gets of putting other people in place to be supporting characters. The story here was always going to be back to Hogan Andre, even though that's still a subplot to what the Mega Powers thing is. All these different people are slotted into these different spots, and they're playing their roles so perfectly. So, the idea really is, booking a feud and keeping physical contact to a minimum. Like, they don't really lock up outside of when they're actually supposed to wrestle, and that's a different concept. I guess you are begging people to want to crave more. But these guys have been feuding for over a year, if not a little bit longer. And whenever they're locked up in the ring, even though they had that finish, it was pretty much a clean win. They put some doubt into people's minds with Andre potentially having that claim to have pinned Hogan. They still kind of go wild. So you understand, even though Andre is definitely limited to the ring, Hogan's the same. There's something about the two of these guys that causes electricity that fans just eat up.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that the part of the benefit is having less shows like they are. They're not on the 12 pay-per-view schedule yet. you're building characters more than you are events. You know what I mean? Like, so like,
Right.
I think that's where AEW is kind of winning right now. I mean, even though we're kind of getting filled in with more and more but more big shows come each month. I think putting your attention to detail into a feud like Hogan and Andre, having it span over a few years, building that shit up, like you're building the characters and then you're building the fallout of the characters. And I think that makes it way more interesting than just going like, oh, on paper, we have Kenny Omega versus, fucking Okada and guaranteed to sell out, guaranteed to draw money. It's going to be a great match no matter what. The fans already are going into it expecting it. This was more of like a, man, what's going to happen to Hogan? You think I think Andre's going to fuck him up. Like there was more doubt within the wrestling fans' mind back here in the days, especially mine. I mean, I'm not even a month old when this aired. So I was believing all this shit. But no, it's I think that's a cool kind of vibe that they got going here. Is it's more about character building, and maybe that's what got it over so big. That they didn't have, a Backlash, a Crown Jewel, all these side pay-per-views. It was just, oh, we're focusing on Survivor Series, we're focusing on Mania, we're focusing on this. The rest is all character building in between. And I feel like that really benefits the overall product.
Do you think we'll ever get to a spot where a giant will be appreciated again to the point where work rate could be sacrificed? I just know they tried it with Great Khali. They
Satnam Singh, hello, guys on fire.
I think Satnam Singh is very talented. Like in a lot of ways, he
Yeah.
can do a lot of things that Andre couldn't even dream of doing. That's not saying he's a bigger attraction than Andre. It's just a different time and place. Dude was a basketball
100%.
player,
Yeah.
But
I mean, even almost like it's there, but I don't think WWE will ever pull. I don't think management will ever pull a trigger on somebody like that again to make it seem that crazy.
It's just hard to even imagine getting to the spot where that would be like, yeah, it seems easy. Like, oh, Roman Reigns versus Omos.
Braun Strowman. He could have been the next big guy where you were like, seeing him next to Bray Wyatt, who was already this big dude. You were like, holy shit, this guy's massive. And then they're just like, let's slap him in a tag team with one of the referees' kids. And then you're like, what the fuck just happened? Like it really, they don't put enough time and effort to build somebody of that stature anymore.
Yeah. And I think also looking at Andre, just the legacy and the lore that came with him from what he brought with him from the times in different territories and just the Japanese tours, like he came with this feeling of, like I said, I think wrestling, and I think you said it before, wrestling's a lot more overexposed, where him as an attraction still held weight. And I think any giant we have now, even if you limit the schedule, there's too much emphasis on the behind the scenes to ever really appreciate potentially someone of Andre's skill set. And I think what Andre was able to do, he was just an absolute one of a kind. I think it's time and place. A feud between Hogan and Andre would not work today. And that's not to say it wasn't great. It just wouldn't work today. It's just not what wrestling fans want. And it also has to tie into where wrestling fans and what they appreciate, what they're looking for. What really draws is emotion. Of course, there's a lot in this feud, but you watch what really sells. I mean, at the end of the day, Roman matches are not, technically sound. They're not 5-star classics, but they still have to do a lot.
Yeah.
Cody and Roman, the emotion they were getting, that there was a lot of athleticism in that match that you couldn't just do nothing. Like you had to go out there. And because if you look at Hogan and Andre, when they're in the ring, they pretty much do nothing, and that speaks volumes, and good for them. I think MJF was saying during his press conference, being able to do the minimal amount, that's credit to the talent and how over they are. A lot to be said there, but this is it's a microcosm of the time. Absolutely. But it's also a one-off time in history that it worked then. And that speaks to like stuff that works today is not going to work 10 years from now.
100%. And like for Andre to get over in the any big guy to get over in this generation, they needed their own reality TV show built around them, showing the struggles. So you have to really show this guy can't sit in the back of a cab, like he can't get on an airplane. That's, you build up the sympathy from the fan base, the viewers, the outside fans that aren't wrestling fans. Like my mom's a big reality TV show person, and like when she sees something, she's like, oh, that I get this because I gravitate towards it. And I feel like for almost to be as successful as Andre the Giant, he would need his own show, like not even WWE produced. Just like, this is the life of being the giant dude, how hard it is, the struggles. Then people are like, man, I really feel for this guy. And then he goes into pro wrestling. Then you're like, oh shit, this is what I want to see. And like, watch him snap, watch him get crazy. Like, okay, here we go. There's too many, as you said, there's too many fucking variables here. There's too many side factors of the outsides.
And there's too much accessibility too. Like Andre, it was, it felt like they just queued him up ready for a wrestling match when he was time to go. Like, it wasn't.
Yeah. Like pulled the box
fact
down.
That Andre would roll up to the arena.
Just walks out.
Yeah. Roll the arena. He puts the single on. There he is. It's just like, now it's, you see them showing up and like they have their own lives, and that's social media, and that's being exposed in the community. And they're like, you would never see Andre the Giant out in these places. And there was a different era of kayfabe. I know we keep kind of going in circles with it, but when you see the heels and faces interfacing with each other, that just didn't happen back in the day. And I'm not saying which era is better or not. It's just, this worked because of, first of all, the two guys, the charisma of both of them, but also the time. 100%. The timing was right, where WWF had a lot of casual fans that could give two shits less about work rate. In a lot of ways, they were turned off by work rate. They didn't want to see the 50-minute All Japan 12 women tag match. They didn't want to see that. Maybe they didn't know what they wanted to see, but at this time, they wanted to see the popcorn. They wanted to see the cartoony. They wanted to see the glitz and the glam of WWF with all the smoke and mirrors, where it wasn't about the in-ring work. It was about the entertainment and the flashy lights. They wanted to see that, and Hogan and Andre personified that so well. Ironically, though, because Andre was so, for him, he did the circuit. He did the circuit, but what's more cartoony, what's more larger than life than David versus Goliath? And not that, Hogan's a small guy, but anyone pales in comparison to the 7'2" Andre the Giant.
100%, man.
7'4", I'm sorry. But I mean, this was the build too is so interesting to me. Like, and I understand, like I was saying last week on the show, WWF gets a lot of credit for the Mega Powers build. They get a lot of credit for the end-to-end booking they've done at these WrestleManias. But I would make the argument that they really had no choice, because like there wasn't the weekly TV that we were watching.
Yeah,
they 100%. Had to stretch their storylines and keep them going. They're taping a month in advance, which has to keep them consistent. They can't pivot. The only thing that really changes is, Hogan is still the damn champion. And that's a lot of if you look at the boom periods of wrestling, you can look at 2023 with the merger of TKO and the media rights and all the money they're getting. It's consistency and it's big matches, and sometimes your attractions have to be seen less to be appreciated more. And that's what we're seeing with Roman Reigns now. That's what we're seeing with Andre the Giant and Hogan here. Not linking up is making people want to see it more.
100%, man.
And we're gonna pop a huge rating next week on that on the main event. So they're gonna be millions and millions of people watching.
There's three things in life that are for sure. It's death, taxes, and Hulk Hogan is your WWF champion in 1980.
This will be our last week we talk about it, so we're gonna get back. Of course, we'll get back to when he wins it back, but he'll be losing that title very, very soon. But let's get to the chaser. Let's give our favorite parts of this week.
The chaser.
There's the Bam Bam Bigelow we all clamor and love for our video guys watch.
So every week we pick our favorite part of the Saturday night's main event. Today we'll choose our favorite of the two events. Belcast will let you start and tell us what your favorite was during these events.
I mean, how can it not be Macho Man and Bret Hart? It was like the best shit. That was modern day wrestling in '87. I wasn't even born yet. Like fucking, I didn't know greatness was happening before I existed. Okay.
I 100% agree with you. There's no other choice. I do like the Hogan Andre build. I think that's been great.
Yeah.
But it was awesome to see as a time capsule of seeing Randy Savage and Bret Hart working there in this landscape, and just, the fans in the building seemed like they appreciated it in Seattle. They were into it, but I think just that, looking at the context of where they went, the history of wrestling, and really how their paths never really crossed in a major way in so many years, even when Bret was the top guy. And then even the one pay-per-view match they had was in WCW on a one-off. And you can make the argument 1998 is not their prime. Like they could have had a more meaningful match.
Neither one of their primes for
92. Like, what about 92? Could we go 92 and have Bret's already at the top of the card, kind of like he's not world champion yet, but he's approaching. He's IC champion, and Randy's still doing his thing. Feuding with Ric Flair. So Imagine a pay-per-view match at SummerSlam, Survivor Series, Rumble, WrestleMania, Brett versus
Yeah.
Randy. Like, it just seems like a missed opportunity. I don't get it.
Don't need Jimmy Hart out there. You don't need Anvil. Like just one-on-one. You know, two guys in their prime. It's insane. But I'm so happy that we are able to experience it. At least this. It felt like a 20-minute match, which in a good way. You know, and it wasn't that bad. It was probably the best thing I think we've covered match-wise on Saturday night's main event. Like it's been amazing.
Yeah, I mean, as far as work rate goes, it's either the Bulldogs and the Hart Foundation or that match. And really, that's, you know, Ricky Steamboat every once in a while tearing it up in the ring. But yeah, we're void of any sort of significant work rate. So anytime it's out there, we just seriously appreciate it. But
Absolutely.
let's close the tab. We'll give our final wrap up. We'll do some shilling for the Tavern. We'll prepare you guys for the weekend because, believe it or not, we're in spooky season, dude. We're in the first week, ending the first week here in October as we approach pretty much the best time of the year. Let's close the tab.
Closing the tab.
Lights are coming on at the bar. You're trying to close and, like, you know, trying to get the attention of the bartender. Hey, trying to get out of here. Hey,
One more.
I got here.
One more.
I guess
one
we'll
more
get
for
one
the
more.
road. One more for the road. Top me off. Top me off.
So before we give our final wrap up and give our shilling, next week's show will be episode 8 of season 5, airing on October 13th, 2023. We're going to be covering 3 events here. Yes, that's right. I said 3 events. We're going to get the main event number 1, February 5th, 1998 from the Market Square Arena, headlined by Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant for the WWF World Heavyweight Championship, and the infamous Strikeforce versus the Hart Foundation match that was still in progress when NBC signed off. They didn't show the ending until 2014, so we're going to actually have a discussion about it. We're also going to cover Saturday night's main event, number 15 from the Nashville Municipal Auditorium in Nashville, Tennessee on March 12th, 1988, headlined by Hulk Hogan versus King Harley Race for the championship, and also Saturday night's main event number 16 from the Springfield Civic Center in Springfield, Massachusetts on April 30th, 1988, headlined by Randy Savage, defending his world title against One Man Gang for with Slick in his corner. By the way, Hogan and King Harley Race is not for the title because the title is vacated at that point. It's right before Mania. So a lot of good stuff here. Like I said, we are pivoting. I added the main events into it, and I'll add it on the graphics so you guys know we're covering it next week. But yeah, that's a big piece I didn't want to miss because, like I said, Mandela effect, there's been some stuff. And believe it or not, when the mega powers explode and they finally break up, it's not at a Saturday night's main event. It's at the main event as well. So there's a lot of things that happen, and you just think it's at Saturday night's main event because it's called the main event. If you put your hand over it, you know, it still says it. But want to make sure we cover the full landscape, build the context. So I think it's important to cover Andre and Hogan. I know you'd agree with that.
Oh, 100%. And I'm surprised Tom hasn't told us about the event being separated from the Saturday night's main event. I feel like this would have been something that comes off of his mouth all the time. I'm very, very shocked. But I'm looking forward to it.
I mean, it is sequentially, it works out that it's supposed to air next week because it falls right in line. Like, it airs February 5th, 1988, and then our Saturday night's main event was March 12th, 1988. So we have the newsletters to build the context. We have all that stuff. So we are seeing was
it aired on a different night than Saturdays? Maybe that's why.
Good question. Pull it up right now. I mean, what is February 5th, 1988? That's an easy question right here.
So it'd be a Tuesday night main event. They didn't want to call it that because they had Tuesday
Title
night
Tuesday.
Title Tuesday.
Happy birthday, Tony Khan. So it was let's see, February 8th was a Monday.
So there we go. So this is the birth of Monday Night Raw.
No, sorry. That's February 8th. February 5th. February 5th, 1988 was fucking Google is
Friday, Saturday.
It was a Friday, so that's probably why it's called the main event.
They couldn't call it.
So it is still the same vehicle. It's still the main event. It's just it can't be called Saturday night's main event, and they didn't want to add Friday night. They couldn't find the font, so they're like, just the main event.
Lauren Michaels is like, "You're not coming on Saturdays. It's not going to happen."
You're being preempted for college football, sir.
Yeah. God
anyway,
damn it.
But we'll talk about the ratings and stuff. But there's a lot to be said about the absolute monstrosity that is the ratings for that main event match, and I'll give you guys a little sneak peek about the amount of people that watched it. It's wild. Any guesses at the amount of people that consumed that on that day, Belcaster?
The way you're speaking, it's got to be under a couple thousand. under a couple 100,000.
So it drew 15.12 Nielsen rating and a 33 million viewers.
Damn.
Absolutely insane. So
I would never have a Saturday night's main event again. It would always be just the event on Friday night.
The second main event, which aired in 1989, did 19.9 viewers.
Jesus Christ.
The third main event was 20.9 million viewers. Continuing down the line, the fourth one was 15 million viewers.
Jesus.
And then we finished up in 1991 with 10.6 million viewers. And again, you got to remember, this is broadcast television without the same amount of options, but
still insane.
We hit a million and a half for
if we're lucky. Yeah.
And then Raw, SmackDown does 2.5 and everyone's excited and stuff. And that is insane numbers. I mean, 33 million people is a lot.
33 million. I have no concept of what that would even fucking look like. That's insane.
So crazy. But let's get the shilling going on. So what's going on Fig Night? Anything going on in the Mike Belcaster world?
Fig Night's great, man. I just we have the Fig Friday crew, Nick Storm and Sam Figs on this week. It was great. And then I just opened up, I don't have him over here anymore, but Eddie Kingston, the Walmart exclusive Eddie Kingston, right after his beautiful win at Wrestle Dream. He's pooping, he's scooping, he's on his way to my collection, man. I'm super stoked, but we had a great time with that. We got Steve Ozer coming up in a few weeks. Fig Night's rocking and rolling, and always right here at Shadow Nostalgia, man. Always a goddamn blast.
Absolutely. Make sure you guys check out Wrestling Tonight. We dropped an episode covering all things Wrestle Dream, talking about Adam Copeland being all elite. We also preview Fastlane. We talk about NXT No Mercy. We break down all the news in wrestling. Eddie Kingston signed a 4-year deal with AEW. So a lot of great news we discussed. Keep up the conversation going on Turnbuckle Tavern. Make sure you guys follow and subscribe and do all the things you need to do at theturnbuckletavern.com. All the good stuff. Buy some shirts. Subscribe on YouTube. Leave a review. Spotify, Apple, wherever you consume your podcast. That goes a very long way getting us noticed. That's how we continue to do what we do here. Continue to drive all the wrestling content that you know and love. Make sure on Thursdays you also check out Brace for Impact, myself and Colton. We're going to be covering Impact Wrestling on the build to Bound for Glory, which is going to be on October 21st. And on a personal shilling note, obviously Remarkable Wrestling. We have the Halloween show coming up on October 27th. You guys see some of the graphics popping up for the match. We also announced that, we also have Youth of the Nation coming up for Restival in December. We're going to be taking the show on the road to Worcester, Massachusetts. Remarkable Wrestling making its state line debut, passing out of New York and heading over to Worcester at the White Eagle, the famous arena. And we are also, obviously, I wouldn't be at Rad Pro Wrestling 1021 for some power transfer. And then if you guys saw the news today, Rad Pro Wrestling is going to have Forever Rad 1994 for the season finale of Rad Pro Wrestling, December 2nd. Cole Cabana is going to be in town. So it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, no, it sounds like a great time. Love it, man. You are making waves, shaking hands, kissing babies, or it's the other way around, kissing hands, shaking babies. I don't know. It depends. We're getting into the final months, man. Things are getting crazy here. 2023 has just been a wild year for pro wrestling. Can't believe we're in October already. Can't believe we're this far in the shot of nostalgia.
I broke my back. Spinal.
He's killing it, man.
This is the only drops we have on here. I don't know why WWF 1998 got the love from the drops, but that's it.
That's all we ever need. All right. That's home in our heart forever. So good.
Love it.
So good. Yeah.
But that's all we got for you guys. We have Jesse Ventura lead us out. He wants to tell us about all the different things like a Tesla and all that, I think.
Oh, we have Baja energy drinks now coming straight out of the Ventura camp, live from the Bajas. And expect me to do a special appearance over at the Turnbuckle Tavern. My good friends over there, the Too Bad Chad, sounds like a tag team I was with in the 1980s, brother. But I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't know what you're doing here. McMahon, where's the mustard? We need the...